Alright guys, Assalamu alaikum. I've been trying to do this for like 3-4 days and trying to figure everything out, but anyways, Ilm al-Usool, which is the science of the process of deduction or fundamentals of the process of deduction or the prerequisites into getting to the process of deduction, or the study of the common elements that exist in the process of deduction, and all these people that try to come up with an exact definition for the science. Just cut it short. There doesn't have to be a definition because it is not a science. So there will be many fundamental discourses that are discussed in the science, and its purpose is more organizational than anything else. The thing about it is, you look at the process of deduction as a way to conclude conclusions in Islamic studies, be it jurisprudential, theological, social, judgmental, doesn't matter. There's a process in a scholar's mind that he has to come up with a conclusion. And the sources is one of the common elements that is being discussed. The authenticity of the sources, the language, the type of language. Does it pertain to a verdict? Does it pertain to a recommendation? All of these are things that have to be kept in the back of the scholar's mind before he concludes anything. When you're trying to organize your thoughts together, you've noticed, let's say you go into the seminary or you start studying, you study theology and you've concluded that, for example, God is one, Prophet Muhammad is a prophet, Prophet Muhammad is infallible, what he says has authority and is binding. You studied this in theology, so this doesn't fall into Ilm al-Usool. Why? Because it had a set place where it was actually studied. Then you go to the authenticity of a hadith, such as Ilm al-Rajal. You want to find out if, for example, is Zurara an authentic, reliable narrator or not? The people that narrate from him, are they authentic or reliable? This is a separate science in Ilm al-Hadith that is being discussed. So even though Zurara is a common element in Islamic fiqh, because he will show up in many doors of fiqh, yet we don't study him in Ilm al-Usool. Why? Because there was already a place for that to be discussed. What happens is, for example, Arabic grammar. Arabic grammar is very essential to the deductions, especially the Quran is in Arabic, the Hadith are written in Arabic. And so when we want to study the Arabic language in the process of deduction, we don't study a full course of Arabic grammar at all. There are certain researches that were not studied in Arabic grammar, so we put them in Ilm al-Usool. Probably the best way to define Ilm al-Usool, if we were trying to grasp for a definition, is that anything that is needed in the process of deduction that has not been discussed separately in its own science, in its own place, usually enters into Ilm al-Usool. That's the usual case. So it's basically a void filler. It fills in the void to help you organize your thoughts in the process of deduction. That would be the best way to describe the science. As much, again, if we were to stick onto the academic way of of reading this, I would have to defend my viewpoint and go back and forth and back and forth. And trust me, they went back and forth pages. If you the Kharaj studies of Muhammad Baqir Sadr, where he puts out all of the definitions of Ilm al-Usul, again, I view this as a waste of time and energy, and there's no need. What's in Ilm al-Usul are fundamentals for jurisprudence that are strictly kept here because they were not researched anywhere else. So this is why they entered Ilm al-Usul. That's the reality of the fact. Can we add to this? Absolutely. And just the more time goes by, the more additions are being added to Ilm al-Usul. That's number one. Are we restricted by it? Not at all. If you were to have a separate, let's say, language course that talks about the usage of language in the process of deduction, then we would not put it in Ilm al-Usul. Even some theological aspects that were not studied even in Ilm al-Kalam, they enter Ilm al-Usul for that reason. So we don't care about the actual definition. We're going to dive right in, and then this way you'll understand the nature of the course in itself. So we'll skip the subjects that are discussed in Ilm al-Usul, anything that you might feel necessary for you to enter the process of deduction has the visa to become a guest in Ilm al-Usul. And for since Ilm al-Usul is getting an attack now from some particular people, especially in the Akhbari school, Abd Halim Ghazi, for example, who says Ilm al-Usul came from the Sunnis and we borrowed it from them and we copied them and whatever, all this stuff. I mean, the guy himself has his own way of deduction and he has his own principles. And this is exactly what we mean by Ilm al-Usul. If the Sunnis came up with it first and it helped us organize our thoughts better, you're more than welcome. The same way he keeps saying, Ilm al-Hadith and Ilm al-Rijal came from the Sunnis. Okay, well, it doesn't matter where it came from. Is it useful? If it's useful, let's use it. If it's not useful, well, put your argument as to why it's not useful instead of just dismissing it. That's a whole new thing by itself. Okay. So we start with the types of verdicts, and we say that there's two types of verdicts. The first type of verdict is a legislative verdict that require an action from you. And the second type of verdict, it does not directly require an action from you. However, it is a verdict that describes your status or your situation. And based on the status and situation, there are actions that can be required or not, depending on that. So there are actionable declarations and situational declarations. Actionable, there are 5 with argument. There's obligation, recommendation, permissibility, makruh, which is not recommended, and forbidden. We could put those down, let's say, to become minimalists. We could say there are 2. There's obligation and there is prohibition, which is forbidden. And then if we want to be even more minimalist, we could say there is only one type of verdict, which is obligation. That means in obligation, that means it is wajib for you to pray. That means it's an obligation for you to pray 5 times a day, for example. At the same time, because something is wajib, leaving the wajib, it automatically becomes haram. Or we could do the opposite, where haram is the only verdict, right? That means, for example, if it is wajib for you to pray, it automatically is haram for you not to pray. So these things go hand in hand. And the permissibility, we could leave. The recommendation, we could leave. The karaha, we could leave if we want to have a minimalist point of view. If we were in the point of view to say that every single action has a declaration, then those five would be a perfect fit. However, that in itself needs proof, because we could easily say that not every action has a declaration. It means there are things that are declared to have a verdict and things that do not have a verdict. And things that do not have a verdict, they are open for legislators to legislate. For example, stopping at a red light is not something that has an Islamic declaration at all. However, we could legislate, basically opening up the void for legislation in society. It gets really annoying to go through it, but let's go on the classic way of researching this and say that there are five actionable declarations, which were what we've just mentioned. And the situational are unlimited to a degree. For example, if a person is married, he has certain responsibilities. If he is single, he has other responsibilities. If a person is in the state of tahara, he has certain responsibilities. If a person is in the state of janaba, he has certain responsibilities and obligations. If a person is living in a house that is stolen, so now this is a situational declaration, but not on the person himself, but on the house. The house in itself is stolen. If a person is eating a food that was choked, it becomes like meat, for example. So it's a situation of the food, but these are declarations. There are many of these declarations. Are they infinite? That could be close to a research. Majority of the Rasa'il Amaliya discuss our actionable verdicts, because we want to know what we want to do, and there hasn't been like an Islamic laws book about the situational verdicts. The situational verdicts basically come as you're explaining the actions, and so you would say, if you are married, you have to do this. It'll be a very nice task to take out all of the situations that were discussed in the Quran, Hadith, and then limit the situations or the statuses of a verdict in the Islamic tradition. And then you would probably come up with a finite number, unless somebody can prove otherwise. But this is something that requires a lot of time. And then as far as practicality is concerned, somebody would really have to defend the benefit of doing such a research. Anyways, so these are our five types of declarations. Oh, this is where we could get fun. Okay. Now, regardless of the verdict, be it actionable or situational, or like basically describing a status, in the process of deduction, we have the hukm al-waqi'i and the hukm al-zahiri. That means the apparent verdict and the actual verdict. The actual verdict is usually something that we never have it. It's what the situation actually is. A better way to explain this is, one of the examples that, for example, Muhammad al-Qasada gives a lot is, he says, you have a cup of water, and you are certain that it's water. And since you are certain that it's water, it is halal for you to drink this water. So when you're drinking this water, it turns out that it was wine. The apparent verdict, based on your certainty, you looked at it, you smelled it, whatever, and it turned out to be water. So you're judging based on the apparency. If it looks like something, then you can make a verdict based on the apparency of your evidence. But once it turned out to be otherwise, let's say you found out while you were tasting it, you found out that it was najas, or you found out that it was wine, or you found out anything. At that point, the apparency also changes because you tasted it, and apparently it was wine, so you let it go. In that case, you're also using the apparency. The actuality usually doesn't matter because we don't have the actuality. The actual matter, the nature of what things are. When a faqih says this is halal or this is haram, he is using the apparency of the evidence. In reality, in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the faqih could be 100% wrong. But that's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. This is the same thing we do in judgments, for example. Let's say you have a person that claims that Mr. Y committed adultery, and he brings 4 witnesses, and the 4 witnesses bear witness that this person has committed adultery. Now the adulterer gets punished. Why? The apparency of the verdict is that if you have 4 witnesses that are adil, that witness something, you take it to be true. In actuality, this person could have been absolutely innocent, but the actuality is ignored because we have no way of knowing what everything actually is. So we ignore actuality and we focus on apparency. And so this is why they say ظاهر الأدلة, الظاهر is hujjah, and it has to be hujjah because if we take apparency out and we don't have actuality, we have no fiqh. If we want to have fiqh, we have to allow for apparency. There is not much to say over there. Now, some people say, for example, the tawheed of Allah, Allah is one, is an actual hukum. It's an actual hukum based on the apparency of the evidence. That's you will always loop around this way. It's actual to you because you gain certainty. Your certainty does not provide actuality. Your certainty provides hujjiyah. Your certainty will provide a permission to do so. Your certainty will provide binding evidence, and that's it. That's the maximum value of certainty. Absolutely, it's not expected for you to go against your certainty at all. And this is why we say that the apparency of the evidence has to be binding. Okay. I think that's enough, 18 minutes, and for you guys to grasp all of this. And we will go on to the next class next time.